UPS, all these companies, right? FedEx, start going that route. I mean, let's face it, that's going to be a lot less people working for them. They don't need them.
Well, there's two sides to this conversation about that too. I mean, if you reverse your thinking though, and think, and this is where my thinking is at now. So, I know it's probably going to sound weird because it takes a while to wrap your mind around a new concept or a new way of looking at the world, but we are living souls, I believe, here on vacation, from wherever our soul comes from wherever it goes to when we leave here. And it's Big Brother that has converted us to citizens, residents, domiciled individuals, persons, and taxpayers. So we have the technology to automate everything, eliminate the need for jobs, and pretty much, I mean, with these new machines that they have that are like artificial replicators, they can make food. You got 3D printers becoming a big thing. We might not need to work. Is that such a bad thing? Well, I think that the reason we feel like we need to work is so we can earn a living, and that living is really given to us in the form of Federal Reserve notes. And what are Federal Reserve notes? Those are just promissory notes, monopoly money, that a corporation that's been hired by the United States of America Corporation and all the other corporations across Earth that are posing as governments, just telling us they're governments, but they're really corporations, and then they're forcing us into this kind of indentured servitude to where we have to pay for all this stuff with their promissory notes or their Federal Reserve notes. That whole system has thrown us into a world where we are indentured servants, basically slaves to the Federal Reserve banking syndicate and the corporations that are posing as governments. So we're in a weird transition, but it's where it's poverty. Really, we're in a world of poverty. I mean, you got like the 1%, the 2%, King Harry's and the princes and the kings and the presidents. They have their way with the world because they are the ones printing off the money and controlling the laws and things like that. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so once I started understanding that, I took all this information now and I've been putting it into my movies and books and reality shows and documentaries, because if we could change and reshape our thinking to say, hey, wait a second, my autograph is just as good as the autograph by the head of the Federal Reserve Banking Syndicate because he's just another living soul writing promissory notes. Well, we can write our own promissory note, and maybe we're going to talk about it on this show, but I've got a huge class action lawsuit that I've built, and now I'm starting to press against the United States of America Corporation about how we have value in our autograph, and we, as corporate persons that we've been created into, have the right to make, sign, or autograph and tender for value our own promissory notes.
Well, actually, I think that our own would be worth more than what the government is printing.
Yeah, it's unlimited, and you know what? It would actually stimulate the economy. It's very simple, really, and this is how our promissory note would work just the same as a Federal Reserve note. Let's say you write up a promissory note for $10,000, and you walk over to your bank and you give the clerk your promissory note for $10,000, and it'd be the same as if you gave them $10,000. They take the promissory note, which is a bond. They pull up your account on their computer, and they type into your account $10,000. Then they take that bond that you just gave them, and they put it in the stack with the other bonds, and those bonds go up to the bond market once a month, and they're sold on the open market, and that fulfills the obligation of the bond once they trade it away. And you got your $10,000. Now you got your $10,000. You can take out money. You can go spend your Federal Reserve notes if you want to, and we all have the legal right to do that. And I've actually tendered for value $275 million and counting in promissory notes. I just sent out another promissory note this week for, I think it was $1,400 or $1,500 for a computer. And what all the banks have said to me so far is, I'm sorry, we won't accept your promissory note. So they put themselves into dishonor, which is misconduct in public office. So I've got enough banks in this position now to where I've got a class action lawsuit, and I'm actually in the process of putting all the paperwork together so I can submit the package to the Supreme Court and fight for our, or really argue and win for our personal freedom so that they accept our autograph and our promissory notes. And one of the interesting things I've found out now, and it's hard to find a lawyer who will tell you this, but in contracts and documentation, there's what's called the rules of styles that governs the way that a contract or anything written down has to be made valid and will hold up in court. And what I found out is that the signature is actually cursive, and it curses the page upon which it's written. It invalidates the contract. So we really have all of these invalid contracts floating around. Nobody's autographing the contract. An autographed contract is with your printed name, so it's legible, and you print it in blue ink, so it's live. And that's how it should be working. But the courts and the governments, they don't want you to understand that they really have no contract over you because they've all been signed instead of autographed.
Oh, yeah. That is so true. And, I mean, really, when you think about it, the dollar you get from the Federal Reserve is not honestly worth what it's printed on.
No, it's not. And, in fact, I was going to start collecting dollar bill Federal Reserve notes and bleach them, and then I was going to just print my own, $50 and $100 promissory notes on them, so I'd be using the same paper, and I could, I was going to put my own picture in the middle, autograph it myself, and make it the way I want. And they couldn't do anything about it. In fact, I read a case about some individuals who were arrested for counterfeiting, but when they went to court, they wound up settling out of court and did no jail time, and they closed the case and wouldn't let anybody read the notes on the case or anything like that. And what I think happened is that every dollar bill, every Federal Reserve note has a unique serial number on it. So if you print up your own Federal Reserve notes that look just like them, but with original serial numbers, well, it's a legal Federal Reserve note. Every promissory note, because a Federal Reserve note actually is a promissory note under the negotiable instruments. What we use is negotiable instruments: bank checks, money orders, wire transfers, promissory notes. Those are all negotiable instruments. Federal Reserve notes are a negotiable instrument in the form of a promissory note. So what they were doing was they were just copying the same format that the Federal Reserve was using, and the Federal Reserve's a company, and they were just probably using unique serial numbers. As long as it has a unique serial number, then it's not fraud. And then when it's tendered for value, if it's accepted for value, then it's that's commerce being done, and it's legitimate. There's no fraud there. So, and I haven't been pinged for fraud. I've been doing this for a couple of years now. I even got an email from Pam Bondi, the Florida State Attorney General, because I complained to her that the Space Coast Credit Union here in Florida turned down my $2 million promissory note, and then they closed my account. And then the bank president, the chief financial officer, resigned, and I couldn't get a hold of him. When I called the next day, they said he left, and he resigned, and they didn't know where he went after he had dishonored my promissory note. So I emailed the Attorney General. She emailed me back and said she refused to discuss promissory notes with me. So what does that tell you?
Yeah. Well, they don't want to get into it for number one, because I think they realize, that really technically, but the thing is, you have to then depend on judges and, juries and all that stuff. And that's the tricky part right there.
Yeah, that's the twisted thing about the whole situation is that most people don't realize, when you go to college or even through high school, they're only teaching you formal English. And then outside the house, you're learning slang English, but nobody's really teaching legal English. And legal English is what the judges and the lawyers and the police use to control the living souls that they've converted to citizens. I'm in the process of filing a major lawsuit against Richmond County, Georgia for, I was at the Augusta Mall. I was talking to people about my one of my DVDs, my True Stories DVD, And the police approached me, and they were like, "Hey, what are you doing?" They asked me my name. They wanted ID, and I refused to tell them my name. I wouldn't give them any ID, and I told them I was a non-citizen, non-person, non-individual, non-resident, non-person, non-domiciled, non-taxpayer. And then they told me that I was a sovereign citizen and attempting to be one, and they arrested me. And then they wouldn't let me speak to a lawyer. And I kept telling them, "Look, you're not taking my picture or fingerprints. I'm not telling you my name." So finally, after about 4 days of torture, I conditionally accepted their offer. I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you my picture and fingerprints for $2,500, but you got to pay me right now. And if you don't pay me right now, then every minute hereafter, it's another $2,500. And they still haven't paid me, so I actually just finished all the legal paperwork today to submit to the Richmond County Court, Superior Court, to take Georgia to make Georgia pay what they owe me for my picture and fingerprints. Because you don't have to give them away. You can make a conditional acceptance. Everything is an offer. So if they offer you something and they say, "All right, are you ready to take your picture and fingerprints now?" and I say yes, they've made me an offer. I could say yes, but here's the condition: pay me $2,500 or whatever. And so I conditionally accepted. They took my picture and fingerprints anyway. They didn't give me my money, and so it's been accruing at $2,500 per minute for over a year now. And so I'm hoping to win like $2 billion, or at least settle out of court for $100 million. And then I'll buy some radio stations. We'll broadcast your show all over the world, and I'll be on it every day.
Hey, thank you. But, even the same way, you get pulled over by, a police officer, right? Well, if you know you didn't do anything wrong, you can sit there and say, I'm not going to give you my driver's license. I don't have to give you my driver's license. Well, tell me what I did wrong first, and tell me what law I broke. And, and if they can't tell you what law you broke and what you did wrong, well, then, they're not going to get my driver's license. Why would I give it to them? I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't. And you're actually really, unless you're being paid to drive, you don't have to have a driver's license. If you're just a living soul going from point A to point B in your own private conveyance, and not being paid to drive and being, regulated by the Department of Transportation, then legally you do not have to have a driver's license. But I guarantee, though, if you're out there driving and you don't have a driver's license, they're going to break their own laws. They will arrest you anyway, and that's why I believe that it's the police and the government that are the real criminals who are extorting Federal Reserve notes from people they've converted into citizens, and they have weapons, pepper spray. They got mass videos out there about, if you try and resist arrest, you got shows like Cops putting fear into the public, knowing that they walk in with their guns, their batons, 3 or 4 of them, and they'll just jump on you and beat you, and they'll kill people, and it's really sick, and we shouldn't be treated this way. And it all boils down to the monetary system, the Federal Reserve notes, and that's all it's about. And if we could eliminate that by getting together in force and coalesce as a group of living souls all across Earth, we can totally get our freedom back and not have to deal with this police brutality, government fraud, and the Federal Reserve Syndicate.
Well, just think about how much of the government, how much trillions of dollars. I was just reading, in fact, yesterday or day before, the Department of Defense admitted that they lost $2 trillion they couldn't even account for. They didn't know where it went.
It's so funny that you say that. I just got my new publicist, Shannon Rose. He's a really good guy. He's commissioned me to write an article for the USA Today magazine. So I wrote the article. It hasn't been published yet, but the one of the main premises in there is that in the story, in the article, I'll give you a little insight. On Friday, September 7th, 2001, that was, the Friday before the Tuesday that became 9/11, I was at Central Command in Tampa at headquarters CENTCOM. It was my last official day on active duty. And then I was going on terminal leave. I was getting out of the military, and I was going to become a contractor. I had a job lined up in Virginia, which I went and took. But my last day, we were all ordered to the base theater.